back into our discussion and an amazing panel that will follow. We hope you made great connections and that you had a good time at your coffee table. And we're turning to a really important topic now, gender equality in the digital and green transition. Our society is going through so amazing changes at the moment. And it's important that women have equal opportunities there, and that inequalities are not further increased. And so the WEgate community is an advocacy player in order to push to create the conditions that women stay agents in this transition and to make it a fair transition in our society. So it is an honor to welcome the WEgate Community Council today. The Community Council of the WEgate platform is the steering group of the WEgate community and a place of advocacy of the interests of women entrepreneurs in Europe. It was established by the WEgate initiative and brings together, and we will hear many powerful voices today. It brings together key stakeholders who all operate in different fields of women entrepreneurship support. Let me welcome to the podium Gabriela Kostovska Bogoeska. She is the Executive Director of the Foundation for Management and Industrial Research of North Macedonia. Gabriela, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Helen. Good afternoon to everyone and welcome to the WeGrow session. This is the session, as Helen mentioned, organized by the steering group of the WEgate community, the WEgate Community Council. And it was also presented during the morning session by our wonderful colleague, Eva Merloni. So I will only highlight that the Community Council is consisted of 35 members at the moment. They're all working in different fields of women entrepreneurship support, and we are very grateful to have them on board because they are helping us in shaping and co-creating what we call the advocacy policy of WEgate. What and how and where we should advocate and represent the interests of women entrepreneurs that are part of our community and wider, that are not directly involved, but they are working very hard across Europe. And in doing so, the Community Council is also supported by one very important aspect, and those are the thematic expert groups. So we do also have thematic expert groups where certain aspects have been analyzed in a greater detail. And one of the first thematic groups that we have launched is, of course, about policy and programs, because it was highlighted during the morning session. It is the system that we would like to repair, and that is why we are starting from the policy level. And certainly in the future, there will be some new thematic expert groups that will have more narrow focus. And today, we will be focusing, as Helen mentioned, on gender equality. It was very encouraging to hear the results, the preliminary results of the WeBarometer, that women entrepreneurs have been resilient during the pandemic crisis. But unfortunately, the gender equality conditions are not getting better. If you have a look at the EC report, the European Commission report on gender equality for 2021, we will find devastating impact of COVID-19 on what gender equality is in Europe. And it is not that we are not only progressing, but we are also going backwards. And if we have in mind that gender equality is the precondition for women entrepreneurship development, if we want to have next generations of women entrepreneurs, we must act immediately, not only as gender equality experts or equality experts, but the whole ecosystem, the entrepreneurial ecosystem must take responsibility and joint action for addressing these challenges related to gender equality, because without gender equality, there will be no acceleration of women entrepreneurship development in the future. And having that said, today I'm very pleased that I can introduce you four amazing speakers, wonderful ladies that have contributed so much to what WEgate is all about co-creation, about networking and policy action. So we have with us Ms. Giulia Sirigu. She is going to be the representative of our very valuable WEgate thematic group on policy and programs. Hello, Giulia, and welcome. Nice to see you.
Lovely to see you.
Yeah, welcome on board, and I hope you are. I'm looking forward to learning a little bit more about what has been going on in the thematic group, and I'm also pleased that we are having here representatives of 3 member organizations from the Community Council, and the European Women's Management Development, or EWMD network, as we call it, presented by its co-president Nadine Nembach. Hi, Nadine. Pleasure to have you
Gabriela.
here as well. Looking
Hi,
forward.
Gabriela. Thanks for the invite.
You're quite welcome, and the honor is all ours. Then we have a real expert in gender equality, our Professor Simonetta Manfredi from Oxford Brookes University, Professor in Equality and Diversity Management. So it's great to have you here as well, because we do need that point of view. We need this academic and research, but also practical experience when it comes to equality. Welcome, it's a pleasure to share the floor with you, Simonetta.
Thank you very much, Gabriela, for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be with this really fantastic panel. Thank you.
And last but definitely not least, our Dr. Yvonne Thompson, the lady, the brain behind the great global network, WinTrade Global. I know that there is no need for special introduction. Thank you, Yvonne, for joining us. We can hear you at the moment.
Oh, it's the plague of being online, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for the opportunity to join such an esteemed group panel. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, thank you very much. I had an opportunity to know a little bit more about what WEgate Thematic Group has been doing lately, and I can tell you that there will be fantastic policy recommendations coming out soon. There will be a policy brief published with key findings from what our expert group has been working on in the last months, and it is a great pleasure to have Giulia with us here today, because she can give us a sneak peek on what these policy recommendations will be, and just to share the experience of how it was to be part of this group, and just to give us a sneak peek on the policy recommendations that we will learn about very soon.
Thank you very much, Gabriela. The pleasure is all mine, to be honest with you, because it has been very inspiring to be part of this thematic group and to contribute to the creation of a number of recommendations aiming at improving the actual situation of women in entrepreneurship. The thematic group that is called Policies and Programs for Women in Entrepreneurship was created this summer, thanks of course to WEgate and the involvement of other 6 women on top of myself that are coming from 6 different countries, from 6 different backgrounds, but with extensive expertise and knowledge about women entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurship, the barriers and actions that are related to this topic, and who worked at the creation of supporting initiatives aimed at the support of the presence of women in business. The thematic group takes into account that for WEgate represents an expert group with an advisory role for the matters in the area of intervention. The activities were planned to contribute to the definition of concrete recommendations for improving the policies and the programs. And this is particularly important, especially also for me, to highlight the fact that the recommendation want to be concrete, want to have follow-up actions that are related to what we are suggesting. So during the last month, we met to exchange our visions and experiences for policies and condition for women entrepreneurs, because we know that unfortunately the last reports and the last numbers in Europe are not positive. So as Gabriela mentioned, there is we are not going forward, we are going backward, and so there is definitely a need to think about which initiatives can improve the actual situation. What we did was to meet and work on a set of recommendations for improving, as mentioned before, the condition for women entrepreneurs and facilitate the exchange of knowledge and good practices across Europe. During the meetings, we had the possibility to discuss our personal experiences and our professional understanding of the necessities present in the ecosystem at the moment. And the key goal was to provide concrete recommendation, as mentioned before. So we suggested a number of initiatives they were conceived from a more holistic point of view. I'm mentioning an holistic point of view because what we need to consider is not only the actual issues or the actual problematics related to the existence nowadays of women in entrepreneurship, but also the lack of women in business. So what can help, or what can we suggest in order to have a wider, more integrated approach to it and a more inclusive and diverse environment? So the area of intervention that we individuated as a priority for the recommendations are the gender mainstreaming, the creation of an umbrella organization able to provide an understanding of the existing landscape and the initiatives and opportunities present in the ecosystem, but also to provide support to women entrepreneurs. The need of information and data for evidence-based policy making. And this is because we all agree that clear data is necessary to understand the actual conditions present within the ecosystem, but also and especially to measure the impact of new initiatives and recommendations and track these progresses in the area. Because if we are not doing so, we won't be able to progress, to provide improvements, because we won't be able to state which is the effect, which is the impact of these initiatives. And last but not least, another area of extreme importance for us is an equal access to finance, and this because because it's something that is not related to the presence of equal conditions, but is the generator of equal conditions. So there are very explicit numbers about the lack of funds, the lack of investments on women-led companies, and initiatives in this area of improvement are definitely essential for us. So after the individuation of this area the several key problematic areas, to be honest with you, we discussed and we provided an input to propose recommendations and initiatives related to each one of these topics, and we refined this set of recommendations that will be published in the policy brief that we collectively created. And the aim of this is to create new models of behavior for future generations. So we considered both the generation that are now present in entrepreneurship, those that are missing these opportunities, but also what future generation can do in order to improve the condition within the system. The aim was also to support the development of a better and more inclusive Europe for women in entrepreneurship. So you will be able to see and read them extensively soon online, because WEgate will publish this policy briefing with all the recommendation. Gabriela, tell me if I'm giving enough space to the other speakers to speak.
Thank you, Giulia. Thank you for sharing all the info. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank you personally for all your efforts, but also all the other members. You've been all amazing, and it was a pleasure to be working with all of you, and all the time and energy and dedication that you provided to the expert group is really truly appreciated. I just want to address the audience. If you have any questions, please do post them in the Q&A box, maybe, or in the chat. We will try to get back to them by the end of this panel when we are planning the Q&A session. So if you have anything to ask, to add, to comment that you would like me to share with our distinguished panelists, please do during the panel. When we talk about equal participation, equality, the EWMD network is doing amazing things. But today I wanted to talk with Nadine on one very interesting initiative that I had the pleasure to be participating in it, coordinated by the network. It's called Brussels Declaration. And I think it will be very interesting for the audience, Nadine, if we share a little bit about what this declaration where it is coming from, what do we want to achieve with it, and how the others can join or replicate or multiply so that we can at the end achieve our goals for greater equality at the end of the day.
Thanks a lot, Gabriela, for the introduction, and also a big thank you from our side that you are one of our cooperation partners working on this Brussels Declaration. And as you already said, it has been a very interesting story so far, and we are really happy and glad that we have so many cooperation partners co-creating this Brussels Declaration with us. Now, what is this about? The idea basically really came from our colleagues of EWMD Germany, who started several years ago a so-called Berlin Declaration. How did this work? There was several women's associations located in Germany who said we need to change the framework, we need to change the framework that politics is giving to us, as Giulia has already mentioned. So we need to enter a direct contact with the politicians who in the end decide on a lot of this framework. And this is exactly what happened. The organizations co-created together what are our demands, what do we need as women to be able to thrive also as women entrepreneurs. This was discussed with the government in Berlin, and we are happy to say that a lot of the demands have already found their way really into German legislation. Now, as Gabriela has said, we are called European Women's Management Development. So we thought, hey, we have to go to the European level as well. Take the learnings from our colleagues of EWMD Germany to start an advocacy project as well on the European level. And this is what we started to do last year. With the same aim, we want to achieve a direct dialogue between us as women's associations and politicians, the people who are in the gremiums who decide on what's going to happen, because we feel we need to change a lot of things for the thousands of women that we are representing together with all our associations. This goes towards legislation, that goes towards funding as well. So all of those issues that in the end decide what kind of working conditions do we have, what kind of chances do we have to get into the labor market, in obtaining leadership and board positions as well. And if you're a women entrepreneur, what chances do you have to fund a company to thrive in the same way as male-led enterprises with the help of European funds as well? At the moment, we have a situation, as Giulia also has mentioned already, that is not really the one that we want to have. There's still a lot of legislation that fosters inequality. To give you an example from Germany, where we have a situation with taxes, if you're a married couple, and if one part of the couple is earning a lot of money, it's better tax-wise and for the overall income if the other partner is not earning a lot of money, so is doing a job that is less paid or is only working part-time. And as you can maybe guess, this mostly affects women, because this is still a lot of the traditional roles that we are seeing here, and they are being fostered by taxes. Just one small example, there are lots of other examples in other countries where we really need to change legislation, because in the long run, stuff like this will have a big, big effect in your working life, and also on things like who is taking care of the children, what kind of old age pension are you able to acquire, and all of those aspects. Same we can see from a lot of countries who have already changed legislation, that it seems to be a good idea at the moment to also think about quotas on women in leadership positions and board positions and so on. Hopefully we won't need them anymore in a few years. At the moment, we feel and we see from studies and figures that they are still necessary. So we need to do a bit more now to change mindsets, to change the attitudes of people, so that in the long run, this is not necessary. In the end, this is also, sorry.
No, go ahead, sorry. I just wanted to say that I agree about quotas. I am very much against quotas, but it is a mean for a greater good. We must stick to it at least for a while. I would be very happy to wake up one day in a world where we don't need any quotas, and that we can discuss about skills and possibilities instead of, I mean, of course, quota does not exclude skills, but somehow it gives a negative perception when you say we need quotas. It's like you're getting that job because of the quota. No, it's because of the skills and abilities. And that is why I very much like what you said. I hope that one day we will we will skip these quotas and we will not need them anymore. And I hope that will happen in our lifetime and very soon, so that our next generation can really thrive and enjoy that. So sorry to interrupt, but it really,
No.
I'm very sensitive about quotas, so you got me there.
Yeah, and as I said, as you also agreed with, in the end, we don't like those quotas. So it's not that we say, come on, give us a lot of quotas and regulations. It's just that the history of the last years have showed us that at the moment they are necessary just to overcome a lot of bias that's happening, to overcome a situation where still a lot of decisions are made by gremiums or boards or whatever who are mainly led by men. We know about those effects that usually people tend to select those other people to come into their group who resemble them. So if we have a board which is led by a lot of men, the probability that another man will be selected to go into this board just is high. We've got, I don't know how many studies that show that. And same here, we're so happy if we don't need them anymore, because the mindsets of people have changed, and then the quota is absolutely not necessary.
Thank you very much. We very much support and like the Brussels Declaration, because it's very much in line with what we in WEgate, as you know, we stand for this broad and inclusive treatment of women entrepreneurship, not only business support services, but broadly when we talk about programs, policies, legislation, equal participation. So all of that is very, very nicely and neatly falling into the mosaic of what WEgate is trying to advocate for. And in that regard, we are very much pleased that we have on board Simonetta, because she is the director of the Center for Diversity Management Policy and Research. I hope I got it right. And maybe you are the most, not maybe, but definitely you are the one that knows most about what is equality, how we can address it. You have done a lot of research, but also a lot of practical things, and we would very much like to hear a little bit about it and get inspired and learn how we can build upon that.
Thank you, Gabriela. I'm actually the founding director of the center. I established it in 2004, and I now have another colleague who is the director. So I'm really pleased that the center since 2004 has been growing. Just to say that I'm really, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me, and I'm really very honored to be part of the WEgate community. And I just want to start by thanking you for offering the WEgate community, for giving us the opportunity to have a fringe meeting, which we held on Tuesday, to spot to focus on academic entrepreneurship, which is something, as you know, Gabriela, which is very close to my heart at the moment. But perhaps I can say about that a little bit later. But first of all, on the question of gender equality, we've done in the center, we've done a lot of work, and we still do a lot of work on gender equality in the workplace, labor market, to really advance gender equality, but also on other equality as well, like age, LGBT rights, social class, because all these different one thing is really important to think about is the intersection. A lot of these different aspects intersect, and then can reinforce disadvantage. So, for example, gender and race. So a Black woman might experience disadvantage and discrimination in a stronger way, a much worse way than perhaps a white woman does experience it. Age also is a very interesting one in terms of, I think in my research that I've done on age, somehow women don't seems to lose all the time, either because you are too young and therefore not credible, or you are too old and therefore you belong to the past. So you're never the right age when you are a woman. And leadership, we've done quite a lot of work looking at women in leadership. I mean, in 2011, we had a really fantastic conference. There was a time, if you remember, that there was a lot of discussion around the introduction of quotas to increase women's representation on company boards. We had an intervention from the commissioner at the time, now the name is escaping me, who was pushing for changing in the legislation. And that was really a very, very important moment in terms of increasing women participation, broadly speaking, decision-making, the environment. Because I think one of the key things is that we hear all the time, at the center we've done research on gender equality in different sectors, but one of the things that emerges is very clearly never stop to surprise me, are the actual similarities, no matter where you're looking at corporate sectors, the sport, or entrepreneurship. The issue that women experience are always pretty much the same across all these different sectors, which shows the importance of ensuring that gender equality in the workplace labor market is really advanced in terms of creating that ecosystem where women can actually thrive. Now, Nadine talked about quotas and Gabriela. Now, that is something else that is very close to me. And I mean, I think that quota are probably, would be, personally, I support quotas as just a temporary measure, because they are temporary, to readdress the balance. Otherwise, it's taking far too long. But I would also like to say that we already have some instruments in the European legislation. We have the possibility of applying positive action in recruitment, in promotions, which means that if you have two candidates who have not their equal, candidates are never equal, but they are of equal merit, then the preference can be given to the candidate from the underrepresented group, for women. And this kind of provision is not used much. It has been used because there is legislation, and there is also the European Court of Justice has been involved in cases where this provision has been challenged. And the European Court of Justice in the various cases has also refined the instances where you can use it. And I'm very keen on promoting this provision, because I think what this provision does, in my view, when you have to engage with that concept of equal merit, you really need to start thinking outside the box and thinking about some of the transferable skills or equivalent skills. Because as Nadine rightly said, often we just, especially in the business world, is very male dominated. And inevitably, people point to their own image, which are the male image and the male experiences, and they keep replicating that. So if you have, then you're forced to think about this equal merit, what equal merit means, what do we actually value, how achievements are assessed, then it forces you to think differently and to look at things differently, because I think it takes you, one of the key issue that you find is this definition of merit. People often say, oh, we don't discriminate. I mean, recently I was talking to an investor, and I was telling him about the research that I've been doing, looking at women's academic entrepreneurs, setting up their own companies, etc., and how they are considerably underrepresented. And he just shut the conversation by saying, oh, we only make decisions on merit, we're the best. End of story. Well, no. We need to question, we need to challenge. What do you mean by merit? Is not a neutral concept. It's, how do you interpret that merit? What merit's achievement looks to you? And it's the same when we look at women entrepreneurs, doing their pitch to the investors. What do they mean? We know there is quite a lot of bias there, because especially among the venture capitalists, they might have a particular idea in their mind of what an entrepreneur looks like and what kind of level of risk. And so we really need to challenge those concepts. And I think the positive action, which is already available, the pushing for the quotas, is all part and parcel of actually challenging these key ideas, which really prevents us from making more, for progressing more the gender equality.
Yeah, And if I may just share some comments from our audience, which is inspired by what you just said. They say investors are often gender blind, and merit is the excuse in some cases. Yeah.
But
And there is also one very interesting. I like this very much. Thank you, Yasmin. Sorry for not if I'm not saying it right. Too young, and then too old, and then in the middle, often raising children.
Exactly.
So,
yeah. You're never right. It's never right. So we really need to challenge those things. And the last things that I want to say is that through the work that myself and my colleagues have been doing in the center, and I was very struck by something that was said earlier on by one of the speakers. Diversity is the most important element to innovate. It is indeed, because when you work on trying to, through research, through evidence-based intervention, to advance gender equality, actually what you do, you improve things for everybody. And you, not only that, but you start looking at things from a different ways. We did in the past a big project which was about work-life balance, and what that involved was thinking about a lot of various creative ways of working, different ways of working. So looking at things from a gender lens also takes you in really innovating. And it is incredibly important that women are in the innovation space, that women are in the entrepreneurial space, because they can then better relate to a lot of needs that are from other women and society. So I'll just end there. I don't want to take too much time from the other speakers, but yeah, gender equality is not just about equality, it's about also innovation and creating, making different aspects of life much better for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Simonetta. Very inspiring, and also, broadening. So to think about diversity, to think about creativity and innovation, those are the messages that we will definitely take away from our today's session, among all the other things that you and all the other panelists are going to present. I wanted to discuss a little bit now with Dr. Yvonne. As I've mentioned at the very beginning, I think that the business support organizations, networks, leaders networks, we all have to take our share of responsibility in promoting equality. And I think that WeTrade Global is a great showcase about what can we do, what business support networks, what women networks can do. Can you tell us a little bit about your experiences, your point of view? What can be done? What has been going on in WeTrade Global every day? Something is happening every day. Yeah.
There we go. Thank you. So, first and foremost, I want to say that I am on the same page, the same line, the same words with all the speakers so far. The information that's been shared has been fantastic. And I would love to work more closely with all of you, because one thing that I find very difficult at the moment, though we have really good representation from women-owned businesses across the European Union, we are finding it more and more difficult to engage and keep that engagement and the closeness that we had before. For us, it's becoming more and more difficult. We are actually at WeTrade, we are actually beginning to look on a more worldwide or a more global basis. And we just think, the more that we talk to women around the world, the more we find that we're different, but we're the same. We're different, but we have the same challenges. If you look at women, in the Netherlands compared to women in Nigeria, for instance, you will find that they're a world apart, but their challenges are exactly the same. So what I feel that we need to do, we need to collaborate even more closely than we are already. We need to join the dots more. We need to keep more aligned with each other's with what everybody's doing. I'm Nadine. You touched a moment in my heart when you started the conversation about quotas, because I've got to say that 5 or 6 years ago, I wrote a book about women in leadership and women on boards. And at that time, you know, even 6 years ago, it wasn't the said thing in the UK. It was not the thing in the UK to say that you agree with quotas. And that particular comment, or in my book, even though the book went down well, there was always the questions about why quotas, why, you know, it works well in, you know, in various European countries. And I agree with Simonetta that we should have quotas, but it should be with timed obsolescence. Absolutely. You know, whether it's a 5-year push and then let the market forces, you know, take over then, I think that's what should be done. I also agreed with so much that Simonetta said around intersectionality. You talked a lot about intersectionality, and I'd written down race, and just as I wrote race, you started talking about intersectionality of race. So I'm glad that I wasn't the one that had to bring that up, because again, you know, I am honored to be on this panel. But every time, you know, every week we do something called WinTrade Global Talks. And we have women from across, not only women, thought leaders from across the world talking about various things. But one of the things that I do, that I have a section of my talk called Holding Your Feet to the Fire. So I always say, it's great that you're doing all this work, but there's always a difficult question. And we have to have, the difficult question for me is, what are the numbers on race? Sometimes I feel like a broken record, but I will keep doing it. You know, I'm privileged to be on this panel. And again, thank you very much, Gabriela, or WEgate for, you know, for having me here. But I would love to know how many people within the audience are actually from a, you know, what percentage of your audience are from a minority background, particularly with race. I think it's down to all of us. You know, a lot of companies talk about corporate social responsibility, but I have coined a new phrase, and I call it personal social responsibility, because it's down to each of us to be personally responsible. Because if a corporate has that policy and the person who is running that policy doesn't believe in that policy, then it's out of the window, absolutely out of the window. So we have to be able to have what I call, again, the difficult dialogues, the one-to-ones. We have to become comfortable with having the uncomfortable conversations. And whether we're having it amongst ourselves or whether we're having it with the men. I mean, again, I can't remember whether you may both have said it, Simonetta and Nadine, you know, the women on boards or gender on boards. First and foremost, being a woman of color, I say we have a triple whammy or a double whammy, because we're women and then we're women of color. So we're already a few steps down that, you know, the rungs of that ladder. And I think it's really important that women who are appointed to boards, and this is a whole other conversation that we have, because there's a thought that the women who are appointed on boards often pull the ladder up instead of keeping the ladder down, or sending, which, you know, whatever phrase you want to use, the elevator, the ladder. So again, we have to look, we have to question ourselves before we start questioning the men. Because again, going back to the board thing, certainly in the UK, the women on boards situation is a lot better than it used to be because of the Women on Boards campaign that I was also part of. However, when you start looking at minority women on boards, nada. So again, we have to really question ourselves and say, are we talking about all women, or are we just talking about certain women? So, you know, we still have lots to do. And that is the conversation, or one of the conversations that Wintrade Global has on a regular basis, apart from encouraging, we do women on boards workshops, we do public speaking workshops, because again, being able to tell your story in a passionate and an effective way, whether you are doing it at a meeting, a seminar, running a course, or, you know, whether you are on a public speaking stage in front of how many thousands of women, you have to be able to put your story over effectively. So apart from those, we are doing regular networking sessions. I mean, Gabriela experienced our 2-day summit, and I was really pleased to have you come along and represent Europe. But what I'm really, because I used to be on the Economic and Social Committee in Europe, so I used to spend quite a lot of time in Europe. But of course, since the parting, since the divorce, it's harder and harder. And I really would love to know how we can bring all of that back together again. I could go on, but I'm going to stop, because I'm sure there are some questions that, you know, that people want to ask. There's the positive action thing. We don't do that in the UK because we're stiff upper lips. I mean, there's so much that we could talk about, but if there are any questions, I'm happy to, you know, happy to help.
And you know, Yvonne, it's always a pleasure to listen to you, and we can listen to you all the time. I mean, it was so nice on the summit and the talks, and they're so inspiring. I really invite all the ladies in the audience, not only the Wintrade Global Talks, but all the different events, network, get your sounding board, listen to different stories, so that you know that you're not alone. And I like what you said, personal responsibility, social responsibility. It's everything starts. As I said on the summit, I also mentioned it there. I'm a strong believer in butterfly effect. I think it starts from within us. Yeah. And there is even the smallest change that we do can make a tremendous difference if we do it collectively at the end. And I also liked very much about that you mentioned about the ladies supporting, and that we should question ourselves first. This is our job. We are the one that should advocate, that should support each other, and of course under equal treatment with male counterparts. We don't want to be special. We don't want to have a special treatment. We just want to get the treatment we deserve. That's all. That's the only thing that we are looking for. And thank you very much for sharing all these amazing things and the different perspectives. As you said, we are aware. For instance, I'm coming from a small country, which is not an EU member state. So I know I'm experiencing a different type of, not a discrimination, but a point of view. You have a different background, different point of views. It's always interesting to hear these different perspectives. That is what we are missing, and that's why this going global is even more important. And one of the things that this pandemic has enabled us with this online meeting is that we can really truly go global, and this is the time. We still have some time before we take on some other questions from the audience. I would like to talk a little bit with Giulia about gender mainstreaming. I'm a strong believer in gender mainstreaming. I know that the European Commission is also dedicated to this dual approach, putting gender mainstreaming or gender lenses when creating policies and programs. And I think that you as a thematic group, you have touched upon that as well. Can you share a little bit your expert or the expert opinion of the group about this?
Yes, I will be very, very happy. It's an important area that we need to consider when talking about equality. But I'm very happy to share the ideas of the other speakers of this panel. One talking about quotas and intersectionality and women supporting each other, which is particularly important. But also when I heard talking about innovation, because all these things, they look very separate, but they are all interlinked. And sometimes we forget about that. I personally work in the innovative ecosystem in the UK. I'm from Italy. So I really feel that all these type of difficulties are not just present in one country. Trying to give a look from a positive perspective to this, I will say this is a good thing because it will be easier for us to collaborate. So let's try to see the positive side of it. In terms of gender mainstreaming within the sector group, we consider all these concepts that we mentioned today, and I'm very, very happy to listen from the other speakers that these are a priority also for them. In terms of gender mainstreaming, we were considering the need to achieve gender equality, to achieve diversity, to consider intersectionality when we are talking about gender equality. And we underlined, for instance, the importance of also different ages when we are talking about equality. So the necessity also to introduce a gender sensitive language that is allowing people from different generations also to relate, but especially the future generation, to overcome some of the difficulties that are already existing, that are intrinsic within the system. They are systemic, and as Gabriela was mentioning before, we want to tackle the systemic inequality present nowadays, because without a systemic change, it will be very difficult just to promote individual initiatives. So we need this umbrella, and this is also the reason for which within the thematic group we discuss about the women entrepreneurship umbrella. The data collection and information should include also the social dimensions like age, ethnicity, income, and level of education, for instance. So among the recommendations we provided within the thematic sector, we will like to advocate for a gender neutral language to be encouraged not only within the working places, but also in schools and universities from an early age, in order to encourage the public administration and private businesses to adopt what is already present at the societal level. So a bottom-up approach from this point of view can be needed, but also a clear vision from the private businesses, from the private and public sector, in order to favor the development of equality within not only the business ecosystem, the entrepreneurial ecosystem, but the entire society. Because as we were mentioning before, we cannot have changes at the economic and business level if they are not integrated and ingrained within the society. Role of role models, we already mentioned this during the discussion today, is critical, is extremely important. Is important for women to see other women showcasing what they're able to do, being present in powerful and leadership position, being present in boards, and the support that women are providing to other women is key. But at the same level, the presence of women entrepreneurs need to be favored by businesses, public administration. So here, the conversation about quotas, I totally share the vision about quotas. I'm not a big fan in terms of I would like to avoid to be segregated in a small area where I'm there just because of my gender, but is like a necessary gym in order to get used to the presence of women, the presence of entrepreneurs in leadership positions, for instance, and to tackle the existing bias that is ingrained within the society, and to allow women entrepreneurs, for instance, to be represented and to be seen as capable of representing other people. And this is one of the key problems. So we suggested to not only to favor the presence of women entrepreneurs in various events, on boards, and in the financial, for instance, ecosystem, but also to share success stories of women in order to inspire the youth, to involve female leaders in different type of activities that are not just related to their business activities. So we need to, according to the group, we need to take an holistic view when talking about gender mainstreaming, and we need to ensure the presence of women in management position, the places where decisions are made, because we need a change also from not only from a policy making point of view, but also from a decisional point of view. So if women are not able to lead the change, it will be very difficult to understand which are the issues, which are the problematics that are tackling different women. And this is particularly important. I'm underlining the word different. And here is related to the concept of intersectionality we mentioned before, because we all experiment similar issues across Europe, for instance, but it is undeniable that the level of and intensity of these issues are increased when we are experimenting the intersection of the different aspects. And we see, as we were mentioning before, we see a decrease in the number of Black women, for instance, in boards, although, well, generally white women are having easier access to boards, for instance. And this is a problem. It doesn't mean that well, there is a need for conquering some spaces, and this could be one of the problems for quotas, but there is a need of providing a cohesive support among the entire collectivity in order to favor the presence of different leaders in decision positions. In terms of data and information, also, well, just briefly, other two.
We are running a little bit out of time for going too much into detail, Giulia, and I like it very much what you just mentioned about the quotas and everything, and I think the intersectionality is something that we should also keep an eye on in the policy briefs and thematic groups that we are going to develop. I wanted to reflect on some questions from the audience. So we have a question from Katie about the intersectionality, and she also agrees with Giulia and all the other panelists that she's glad that it has been raised up. And there is one very concrete answer, a question, maybe Yvonne can help me with it. It says that we are lacking data when it comes to people of color, women of color working in women entrepreneurship. You also asked me how many different minorities we have in the audience. Honestly, I don't know. And this is also a lack of data. So this is, you know, a point taken. Thank you. And the question is how we can then better support women of color in the UK, not only in the UK, but in Europe, despite the lack of this data. Well, one obvious answer will be collect the data, but in any case, we cannot impose that always. So how we can address this issue?
Yeah, I'm not muted this time.
No.
For me, it really is about outreach. It is about social media. It is about talking to more groups like mine. I mean, WinTrade Global initially started as a Black women. It was actually called the European Federation of Black Women Business Owners when I first started, because there wasn't anything for Black women. But again, you know, being very cognizant that diversity works both ways. About 6 or 7 years ago, I changed the name of the organization because I wanted to make it more open and have more engagement with white women. And now I would say we're probably about 50-50, to be quite honest. It's been very successful because the other thing that I feel, for us to have equal opportunities, we all have to be in the same room, very much like this, at the same time, hearing the same information, feeling the same energy that, you know, that is on this panelist, so that, you know, white women know what Black women go through, or women of color, whatever, you know, however you want to phrase it. But I do feel that it's important that everybody, where possible, is represented in the same room at the same time, hearing the same information. That is what I call equal opportunity. Then it's up to them how they use it.
Yeah.
One thing that I just want to say very quickly, Giulia, you mentioned role models. Well, I want to change the narrative of role models. We're real models, not role models. We're real, we're really doing it, you know, so please, let's move from role models to real models.
Thank you very much, Yvonne. It's just being aware It's the first step, as it has been nicely put in the chat by one of our participants. Just being aware of intersectionality is the first step, and then we can work on any, depending on resources, on the different actions. But being aware, I like that, and that is one of the messages.
I say that I'm happy to help anybody with that. So
thank you. Thank you very much. You've been always open and supportive. There was also a question in regards to maybe Simonetta can help me with this, and then I will have one quick question for Nadine. Well, Simonetta, there is a lady in the audience. They're doing an Erasmus project, and they have encountered a problem of not having, let's just say, adequate data on gender equality, or something that they can compare in different countries. How we can avoid that? Is there anything out there, a resource that they can use so that we can support them in this regard?
I suppose it depends what sector in particular you're looking at, because there is data, for example, if I'm thinking about the higher education sector, if we want to compare at European level, we have the SHE figures, which are provided by the European Commission. So the European Commission does put together quite a lot of statistic figures which compares different countries. It depends which area in particular you want to, because sometimes the figures are collected by sector, or but there are statistics out there. Now, one thing that I would say in terms of data, a word of caution, because especially with the European stats, which are incredibly helpful, no question of that, but having used them myself, and I live in the UK, but I'm Italian as well, like Giulia, so sometimes they're a bit deceptive, because it depends how the member states feed into what they feed into the European statistics. And let me give you an example. When I look, for example, at the stats relating to women participation in the labour market across the European member states, in Italy, I think the figures might be a bit misleading, because in Italy, if you look at the north of Italy, women's participation in the labour market is very high, but then in the south of Italy is much lower. So when they aggregate the figures, that brings down the whole thing. So it gives you a picture of women participation in the labour market in Italy, which is not quite right. And I think the same can be said about other countries as well. So yes, there are, first question, what exactly do you want? Which kind of area do you want? Is it women's in the labour market you're looking for? There are European stats available, but also when you look at them, a word of caution in terms of saying that what you draw from them, because as I say, they are useful, they are indicative. We can't have the perfect things, but they might disguise some important differences in European countries. I hope that helps.
Thank you very much, Simonetta. And Nadine, can we share a little bit about what are the next steps about Brussels Declaration, and what is the expected impact? What do we want to achieve with it? What is the time frame?
Mm-hmm. So the current status is that we have several cooperation partners such as WEgate, and we are in a co-creating process. So at the moment we are really formulating the details of what should be in this Brussels Declaration. If somebody wants to join this discussion, highly welcome. If we talk about timing, our aim is to have this declaration ready. Well, it's an ongoing process, so as ready as it can be at the beginning of next year, where we plan to go to Brussels together with our cooperation partners and really enter those discussions with the politicians, with the people sitting in committees. And in the end, this is also the long-term goal, because we want to be a continuous discussion partners, sparring partners with those people who are responsible for legislation and fundings. So this is not meant to be a one-off thing and we send it out and there it is. This is really meant to be a basis where we start the discussion and continue the discussion with those who are responsible and who can make decisions.
Yeah, definitely. It's not a letter of intent. Yeah. No, it's not a letter. Yeah, it's been, I know I had a pleasure to be part of the process. It's really intensive. A lot of people working on it, and every single paragraph is being discussed very, very thoroughly. Well, thank you very much, and it was very inspiring. We can go on for hours, but it is a lunch break, and let's keep some of these very interesting thoughts and messages for a next event that we can organize. We always have that possibility in this online sphere. I would also like to thank all the audience that has been very, very active on the chat. And it's always a pleasure to not only get a positive reaction. I've seen a lot of people from our WEgate Community Council saying hi to Cheryl, people from our thematic group like Lena and all the others. It's not only about that, it's also about seeing that what we discuss, it's really relevant, is that we are getting the support from the audience, they're getting support from the community about quotas, about real models, and about so many different things that we raise up today. We just, scratch a little bit, and we need to work very much harder on the rest of it. And let's just let's stay inspired. And thank you very much. Thanks to all the panelists that joined me today. I wouldn't make it without you, of course, you know that. And to Helen, getting back to you now.
Thank you so much, Gabriela. Thank you so much to all of you for these amazing insights. Incredible women that we could hear this morning. I want to thank all speakers, all contributors this morning, and everybody also in the chat. Some highlights that I have kept was the encouragement to all of us to team up, to not do it on our own as women, to connect, and therefore also to listen and to hear how others do it, and then to dare to lead the change differently, to take, as you said, Yvonne, personal social responsibility. And because the change in the end starts with us, I found that such a powerful message. Thank you for that. And when we all do that, then there's some real change. So powerful. And women quota as a gym, I also found that a great quote. So thank you for that. I'm looking forward to the Brussels Declaration then. So thank you for an amazing panel and all the morning panels. That's a wrap for our morning session.